Hello. So in this video, we're going to go over the UPenn Call for Papers website. So this is a scholarly resource that if you're an academic, if you're a grad student in particularly the humanities, English, theater, etc., you want to know about. So I'm going to take you through the UPenn website and show you some of the crucial things that you want to be familiar with as you try to navigate this. So to start out very, very briefly, I'll share the screen here. So a CFP is a call for papers. This is the sort of scholarly shorthand or acronym for it. So calls for papers may be for things like conferences, right? Conferences need people to attend, and so we need people to propose papers to be presented. Sorry, I'm in what I hope is the latter stages of a cold. This may be for journal articles. Scholarly journals sometimes send out calls either for things like special issues, which will have a particular theme, or if they need additional articles for an upcoming general issue. This can be, sometimes you will see things like calls for book reviews, film reviews, performance reviews, things like that. This can be for edited collections, chapters within edited collections typically. So that would be where you have an individual scholar who is putting together a curated collection of chapters, basically essays, about a particular topic. So those are the main things that you see on the UPenn CFP's website, and this is what it looks like, by the way. I will put a link down in the description to this page, but it's call-for-papers.sas.upenn.edu, run by the University of Pennsylvania. And this is a good place. You can submit a new CFP if you yourself are looking for papers. I've done that. You have to. I'm not going to show you that. Maybe I'll make a subsequent video about sort of writing and submitting a good CFP. But you can do this yourself if you want to. I have done this through UPenn, and it does get pretty good response rates. So what you've got, basically, you can look at all recent posts if you wanted to, and that just gives you everything that's been posted or updated recently. But that's by far not the most cost-effective way of going through this. That gives you a lot of stuff, but it's very, very unfocused. And so much more usefully is the sort of category options along the left-hand side of the screen here. So some things like African American, American, bibliography and history, the book, children's literature, classical studies. These are obviously genre or historical period categories, right? So film and television, poetry, these are genre-based categories. So calls for papers about those particular genres, about poetry or about film and television, etc., will be listed there. And this, of course, depends on the author of the CFP to have marked it within those categories. Other things, cultural studies and historical approaches, eco-criticism and environmental studies, gender studies and sexuality, these are based in the critical lens that one is working in. So if you're a feminist or a queer theorist or something like this, gender studies and sexuality. If you're an eco-criticism person, eco-criticism and environmental studies, this is where you're going to find stuff that's relevant to you. And then there are temporal ones. 18th century, classical studies, 20th century and beyond, right? These are temporally based. So if you work on stuff from literature from the 1700s, 18th century, if you are a contemporary lit person like I am, 20th century and beyond. But then there's also some categories that are specific to types of things. So the awards category, this is going to be contests, competitions, et cetera, for books, articles, things like this. Graduate conferences, especially if you're a grad student or even if you're an upper level undergrad in some cases, things listed as graduate conferences will be more welcoming to your application. Some of them are specifically graduate conferences, and they will say, let me see if I can find one here. So, like the American Comparative Literature Association, Northeast Modern Language Association, these are general conferences that are not specific to grad students, but they may be welcoming of grad student and possibly, depending on the panel organizer, even undergrad authors, though that's more rare. But something like this, call to host the 2026 Post-45 Graduate Symposium. So anything called Graduate Symposium, Graduate Conference, things like this, these will be spaces specifically intended for grad students to come and share their work with other grad students and possibly with faculty members in the audience, professional scholars in the audience, who will provide feedback and help those grad students develop professionally as scholars, as presenters, as whatever it is. And then the other one that I think is sort of worth directly pointing to is this journals and collections of essays one. Because all of the rest of these, if you go to gender studies and sexuality, if you go to medieval, if you go to post-colonial, if you go to Renaissance, whatever it is, you will get a mix of conference CFPs, journal CFPs, book review, film review, theater review, whatever's relevant. You will get all of those things. But the journals and collections of essay is one. This is really useful if you are looking not for conferences, but just for places to publish pieces of scholarship. Now, this is an undifferentiated category, so you will get Handbook of Indian Trans Cinema, followed by Bloomsbury's Critical Plants Studies, followed by Peter Nichols' Essay Prize 2026 for the Science Fiction Foundation, Unsettling Scottish Literature, Studies in Hogg and His World. So what gets put in there is not particularly sort of organized in any way, apart from the fact that they are all publication opportunities. Whereas if you go to one of the other categories, so like I often look at theater and performance studies because that's my scholarly area. So in this case, we have a virtual conference run out of India. We have panel at the Shakespeare Association of America. We have Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot Worldview Critical Edition, because this is a critical edition. This will be a publication opportunity. Chapter abstracts will be for an edited collection, etc., etc. So again, you get these very different types of things, and within them, as you are sort of scanning down these lists, there's a couple of things you want to particularly be thinking about primarily. So one is going to be, what type of thing is this? Is it a conference? Is it a digital conference? Is it a edited collection? Is it a journal, a call for journal articles, etc., etc.? Often that can be clear from the title, right? So this says virtual conference. This says worldview critical editions, chapter abstracts. These are all keywords that tell us what type of thing this is. But something like this one, how not to be a misogynist, unintentional sexism in early modern studies, that actually doesn't tell us what this is, right? That could be an edited collection, that could be a special issue of a journal, that could be a conference presentation. So we have to actually look down to the beginning portion of this. This tells us, in this case, right at the beginning, this is a panel for the 2025 meeting of the Shakespeare Association of America. If that didn't tell us that quite that quickly, we could open this link, and somewhere in the description, it would tend to give us that information. This is actually a pretty straightforward one. It looks pretty good as far as sort of a setup for oh, never mind. Sorry, I misread that. This is actually not a panel proposal. This is a proposal for an edited collection. It just comes out of that panel. So read more carefully. If I were actually looking to submit something for this, I obviously would have read that more carefully. I'm sort of working with whatever is popping up for the purposes of this video, but this is still a pretty good call in terms of the kinds of things you might normally expect to see. So we have a bit of a framing. A date for submission. That's always a really important thing. Because UPenn itself does not really take these calls down typically when they expire. And so you will often see things where the deadlines have passed. In this case, we got the names of the editors for this edited collection, but you may also have the name of an organization like that one says the Greuter Publishers, which I don't possibly. This is a better example. PML, Pamela, the Pacific and Ancient Modern Language Association, I think is the name of it. I don't really know. Northeast Modern Language Association. Yeah, so you'll often see these kinds of things. These will both be conference presentations. Theater Academy World of Journal of World Theater. That will be a journal, article, a journal, etc., etc. But in this case, we have individual author or editor names. And then under that, sorry, you have a sort of framing bit of information. Here's some background on what this is doing. And then this is a very common thing. Sorry. Where they will give you lists of, here's some kind of suggested topics, whether those are very specific or whether those are very broad, general topic ideas. In this case, they seem to be a bit more developed, but sometimes you will just get lists of like keywords or something like that. And then one thing they've included that I think is quite good, that some people are better about than others, they tell you what to send them. In this case, title, abstract, working bibliography, and author, CV, and bio. That's not that unusual. The working bibliography is slightly unusual, although that may be that they assume that anybody who's submitting by July 15th, with a December 2025 deadline, will have something, will have a decent sort of sense, or not, if not framework, for what's being written. But that's somewhat unusual. But a title, abstract, author bio, those are very, very standard. And then they tend to give you contact information for who you can contact, which is often quite useful, because those are the people that you would be working with the edited collection, or the session organizer, the chair of the panel, whatever it is. And then for edited collections, things like this, something like this, a note like Bloomsbury has shown preliminary interest in this collection. That's a really good sign, because that means that they have already started doing the legwork of finding something. So so this is a conference one, to a conference that I'm going to be applying to, probably not for this panel, although maybe, who knows. But again, you're seeing the same kind of thing, right? A contact email, the name of the organization, which in this case is a conference, and then some framing for the panel. This one has gone much more with the just keywords, right? So the role of heroes and heroes, the Minotaur or the Labyrinth in art and art history. So these are less descriptive than what we had in the other one, but they do the same kind of things. A 250 to 300 word abstract, approximately 100 word author bio, here's who to send it to, and the deadline for sending it. So this is the kind of thing that you basically get with the UPenn CFP's website. And again, because they have such a wide range of calls for papers, for different types of papers, panels, reviews, etc., and because they are fairly easy to navigate once you get the hang of it, and the CFPs tend to give you good information, it's a pretty useful resource to be aware of as a scholar.